I got exclusive access to Supercell's newest game, Moco. Now, Moco is Supercell's newest announced game that has not been released yet. It is essentially a Monster Hunter styled MMORPG where your goal is to hunt monsters with other players. Now, they had a closed beta a year ago where a very small number of players could play it for a few weeks so that they can share feedback to the developers, and then the developers could apply feedback and develop the game. Well, recently they had a super secret beta test that was limited to employees of Supercell only and a very small handful of creators in order to test what has changed with Moco in the last year. And this right here that you're seeing is footage of that gameplay test that I was able to participate in. I was very lucky to be able to be one of the beta testers, and I am going to be giving you a first look at some of the newest features that they have added. That includes new gear, a new progression system, a new endgame loop, and even PvP. Now, a lot of the changes were good, but a fair bit still needs to be improved in my opinion. And I actually wrote them almost 20 pages of feedback on the game. And I'm not even going to cover all 20 pages of feedback because you guys don't need to hear everything, but I really wanted to share my thoughts publicly. So I asked Supercell, I was like, hey Supercell, I know you said I couldn't record this and make a video on this, but can I please? And even though they initially said that I could not create content on this beta because it's still very much in development, against their better judgment, they gave me the thumbs up with no strings attached. No restrictions on what I can and cannot say. No limitations on what I can show you. Just 100% honest feedback, which I was kind of surprised by because I'm pretty sure this video will be the first showcase of PvP in the game. I even triple checked with them. I'm like, you're okay with me talking about PvP? And they were like, whatever you say goes. I'll just be honest about it. Give us your brutal feedback. And I was like, okay, if you guys say so. Just keep in mind that this still is in beta. Some of the stuff that you'll see in this gameplay, you'll see some bugs, okay? There's stuff that will not be in the final build probably. Like one of the new weapons just makes your character invisible. So if you see a bot that's invisible, just attacking stuff, then well, there you go. You'll see it. Whatever. Don't worry about it. It's not supposed to turn your character invisible. My intention isn't to be nitpicky about anything weird or glitchy or anything like that. Honestly, I'm just thankful that they let me show you some new gameplay in the first place because it's been a year since you guys have seen actual gameplay of this game. And also, everything is subject to change before this game is actually public. So they were testing some things out that the beta testers didn't love, and they even announced it and the community didn't love. And I have a pretty good feeling they're going to change some of those things. So I'll talk about that in this video. Let's start off by talking about what has changed since the last time players had a chance to play the game. And if you haven't kept up with Moco, you're going to want to stick around because this game is so good. Now, the biggest change to the game that I am personally so stoked about is that the developers want to make Moco a very free-to-play friendly game, okay? In the build from a year ago, they had two forms of monetization, even though they weren't like technically enabled because it was just a beta test. But basically their plan was Moco Plus, which you would pay for to be able to get 50% faster experience rates and have more daily quests available to you than other players. Additionally, they had some sort of currency, I don't remember what it was, but it was basically a currency that you could spend money to buy that would then be used to upgrade your equipment. Both of those features, that premium currency to upgrade your equipment and Moco Plus, have been removed from the game. On their socials, they mentioned that they actually want to focus away from monetizing gear upgrades and power-ups, and instead they want to be all about customization, outfits, and stuff like that. And they said on their post that they want to remove most, if not all, pay to progress stuff from the game. What? Are you kidding me? Remove most, if not all, pay to progress mechanics in the game? Free-to-play players, rejoice. Everybody rejoice. That means that if you see somebody with some super awesome piece of equipment or gear, they earned it. It's because they played the game and not because they paid it. And if you want that same gear, you've got to play the game and get with the program. And that is so huge. I seriously hope that they stick to that. I want them to commit to us. I want them to promise and be like 100% free to play. I would absolutely love that. If they can make this work, that's going to be huge. I think this is so exciting. Moco is going to be a game for everyone. And I think that this is going to be one of the big reasons why the game is going to explode in popularity. The MMO community, they're sick of microtransactions. And as soon as pay to win mechanics are ever discovered in new MMOs, the players just lose interest so fast. Even for like the MMOs that are just like so awesome, the best graphics, the awesome boss fights, whatever, does not matter. People are sick of pay to win, and it has really ruined a lot of people's taste for MMOs. It just has. And even outside of the MMO community, gamers in general are pretty tired of over monetization in the gaming industry. But with that being said, it's also a huge risk for a game publisher to develop games without pay-to-win mechanics in it, because at the end of the day, their work needs to pay off. Obviously, they have to earn money to develop the game, and that money comes from investors who need to get their investment returned back to them, or that game publisher is never going to be able to develop another game in their life because no other investor is going to reinvest with them if they didn't make their money back. It's the sad truth of game development. It just is. And also, it is good for game developers to make money because it means that they can then further develop their game. The more money they make, the more they can reinvest back into the game, the more people that they can hire, the more future games they can develop. So big props to Moco for making this decision. It's a huge risk. I think it will pay off. I hope it will pay off. With that being said, though, I do have my concerns. You see, I want Moco to be a free-to-play player's paradise, but I also want Moco to be super successful financially so that they can grow their team and grow the game. And I'm not 100% convinced that monetizing by cosmetics alone is going to be enough. At least not with the cosmetics that I saw in the game in this most recent playable. Now, to be clear, I'm a player who just does not care that much about cosmetics, and I don't think that a lot of people are. I could be wrong. I know that there are lots of people out there, but I think that maybe for every 10 people that play a game, one of them is going to pay for cosmetics. And I think that that number is a huge, huge overestimation, okay? And I hope I'm wrong with Moco, because I want the game's progression to stay 100% free to play, and this is a concern of mine. And this is coming from someone who does spend money on games. A lot of money on games because of my profession, right? Even pay to win games. And that's because that if a developer makes spending money on their game feel worth it to me, I'm willing to spend money on the game. So when I say that the cosmetics that I have seen aren't worth it to me, I think that's a big red flag. And that very well could because their most recent playable was not focused on showcasing their cooler cosmetics. In fact, I think that's probably a good guess. But I think that the game needs to further incentivize people to spend money on the game in some other way. I'm not saying I want the game to become pay to win. That is not what I'm saying. I want Moco to commit to the 100% free to play progression, but I think that they should consider some alternatives to monetization or other perks that would benefit people who spend money on the game besides just cosmetics. Maybe it's like minor conveniences. I don't know. Maybe it makes it so that your mounts move faster when you're not in combat, but only in the overworld where you can't really abuse that. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I hope that they come up with something though, because I want the game to be successful financially. And hopefully they can solve this issue, because I just cannot tell you how badly I want Moco's progression to be 100% free to play. Now let's move on to the second biggest change of the game, and that is a complete rework to how you upgrade your gear. A year ago, if you wanted to upgrade a weapon, you had a list of monster parts that you had to go out and farm in order to upgrade them. Some monster parts were easy to get because there were hordes of tiny little beetles or tiny little dragonlings that all dropped massive amounts of these resources. But some of these monster parts were actually like really hard because they only dropped from really, really rare monsters, and you had to just like go all over the map to find them. It was super grindy if you wanted to upgrade all of your gear, like way too grindy in my opinion, which is weird because one of my feedbacks was that I enjoyed the grind of Moco back then, but I did not enjoy the grind. And honestly, I love Moco's gameplay. I really did enjoy the grind. And one thing that I did really appreciate with the previous progression system for the gear is that you could hyper focus all of your time into just upgrading one set of equipment and ignore all of the gear that you didn't care to use. This was awesome because somebody who didn't have a whole lot of time could still be fairly competitive with their one set of gear because they ignore all the other gear and only focus their resources on upgrading that one set of gear. I liked that, even if the gear progression system was too grindy in my opinion. Well, the new gear upgrade system is completely different, except for the fact that you're still just hunting monsters. But instead of hunting specific monsters to get parts from that specific monster to upgrade your gear, you now upgrade your gear through Chaos Cores. Now, Chaos Cores could drop from literally any monster. It could be a tiny little minion that you kill swarms of, but it's the big boss monsters that are most likely to drop a Chaos Core. And once you get a Chaos Core and then return to your room, which is like the main hub, then the Chaos Core will randomly upgrade any of your gear. There are some things about this new system that I like a lot, but there are some aspects that are definitely worse. Let's talk about the better side of this first. I love how much simpler the new gear upgrade system is, okay? While I did enjoy how grindy the last system was, it was so frustrating. It was really so frustrating to run around the map aimlessly hoping for a specific monster to come across your path so that you could kill it one time out of the 50 times that were required for you to upgrade your weapon. Yes, I did like that it was grindy. It was just too grindy in my opinion. And with the new system, it's just so simple. You kill monsters, you upgrade gear, repeat. So simple, and this simplicity is way important for the game's long-term success in my opinion. In game development, as much fun as it is to make super complex systems that cater to hardcore gamers like me, or like you guys who are watching my videos, it's also super important to consider the super casual or even inexperienced gamers. For example, my 5-year-old would never have done well with the old progression system. Specifically, hunting a unique monster 50 times to upgrade a weapon is just too much of a hurdle for her. She's just not going to do that. She's gonna play it however she wants, and that means that she's either not going to play or she'll keep playing with underleveled gear because she won't understand how to upgrade her gear, and then it will just become more and more frustrating because she won't have strong enough gear to compete. It's just not good. It's just not good. And forget about my wife trying to play Moco. Like, she would be like, what, I have to go kill 300 of these tiny little minions? What the heck? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to play this game in the first place because my wife hates playing games. Moco might be the first game she likes to play. We'll see. But under the new system, her gear will get upgraded no matter how she plays. Because there's just no wrong way to play. It's way better for more players. And honestly, in terms of grindiness, I actually prefer the new system way more than the old system because I don't have to think about which monsters to hunt. And also, if you guys are worried about the game no longer being very grindy, you don't have to worry about it. The game is still super grindy, even without this complex gear upgrade system in place, right? There are plenty of long-term quests called projects, and these projects take a lot of game time to complete, okay? These projects that you're seeing right here, that is after me playing for almost a whole month of Moco, and there's still so many things for me to do even in the early worlds. And these projects are there for the hardcore gamers who want to get every bit of extra progression as possible. Believe me, the game is still plenty grindy, and that aspect of the game is still very, very, very fun. But there's one aspect of the new gear upgrade system that I am not a fan of. At all. Like, I really don't like it. And I wrote pages and pages and pages to the developers being like, get rid of this. I don't like it. That's the fact that it's random. It is completely random. And there are two aspects of that randomness that I don't like with the new Chaos Core progression system. When you get Chaos Cores, it could upgrade your favorite weapon, or it could upgrade a random piece of equipment that you don't like using at all because, hey, you're not a tank, and that upgrade was for a tank gear. That sucks. For the hardcore gamers who are going to grind Moco to dust, it's not a big deal. They're going to play the game so much that all of their gear is going to max out eventually. But this aspect of randomization is actually terrible for somebody who has limited to playtime and only cares about their favorite weapons and their equipment. With the old system, they could focus their time and efforts into upgrading just one set of equipment and still play competitively with friends of theirs that have more time to play than them because they're just focusing on just one set of equipment. But with the new system, that would mean that they would just be undergeared and not competitive until much later on, which is like in an aspect is kind of fine, but it makes the game actually worse for players with less time, and it makes it harder to play with friends who have more time than you to play or less time to play. And that's a hurdle. That's definitely an issue. They want Moco to be a very social game, and overcoming this hurdle in some way is very important. Now, to say that this new progression system is completely random, that's not 100% fair. For every 3 jobs or these daily jobs that you complete, you get to open up a chest that gives you up to 4 options to choose from, and you can choose whichever one you want to upgrade. I mean, but it's like, it gives you 4 options out of so many different pieces of equipment, and you may not get your favorite one to pop up. And I suppose that it is better than nothing, but it's really not that great. It's really not. And I do think there's a solution that would be the best of everything. My suggestion is very simple. Keep Chaos Cores, okay? I like how much simpler it is for you to upgrade your gear, but instead of them 100% being random, I think that they should just randomly upgrade the gear that you are using when you get them. The game already has a cap for how upgraded a piece of equipment can be based off of your player level. So for the casual player who just wants one set of gear, they would just equip that one set of gear, and then the Chaos Cores would randomly upgrade one of those items that they're already using, which is fine enough because they're using it. They clearly like it, right? And if their equipment then became max level for their player level, then the Chaos Core could randomly upgrade any of your other gear that they don't care about. And with this new system, the end result for the hardcore gamers is still the same. They will get all of their gear upgraded to max level. But for players with less time on their hands, they'll now be able to hyper focus their limited time on their chosen set of equipment so that they can reach a competitive level sooner, at least with that set of equipment. Now, the biggest potential issue with this suggestion is that some players may feel like they're just done with the game once one set of their gear is maxed out. And I can totally see this as an issue. That is a concern. But the cool thing about Moco is that each piece of gear is better or worse depending on the content that you are engaging in. The game naturally encourages you to try a bunch of different equipment because no piece of gear is best at everything. And if a piece of gear is best at everything, then the developers can rebalance things so that players have more reasons to upgrade multiple different pieces of gear. No matter what the developers do though, if they can keep gear upgrades simple like the new system, but also give players more control like the old system, I think they'll have a very solid system that works for everyone. Now, the second random issue with Chaos Cores is when you get them feels very random. There were times when I didn't get a single Chaos Core for half an hour. In my playthrough, I even grinded a double Chaos Core event and didn't get a single Chaos Core for 15 minutes. And then on the other side of things, I've had moments where I unlocked 5 or more Chaos Cores in a 10-minute period. Now, after playing for a long time, I realized that the reason behind this randomness was likely due to the difficulty of the content that I was farming. Super easy content very, very rarely gave me Chaos Cores because my gear was very overleveled, right? And then on the flip side, when I was playing difficult content that I was very underleveled for, it seemed like they were just spitting out Chaos Cores like crazy, which was fun. And I think that that is good. But the issue with this new system is that grinding for gear upgrades also feels very aimless, right? There's less drive to grind for an upgrade because there's no concrete directive to do so. You're just like aimlessly going around trying to hopefully get a Chaos Core eventually. And that's weird and not fun. And a very simple suggestion here would be some sort of an ongoing quest from one of the game's NPCs to collect monster essence or something like that. And when you turn in a set amount of essence that all monsters drop, they would reward you with a Chaos Core that you would then upgrade some of your equipment. Monsters from easy content could give you less essence, and that would be very visible for you. Whereas monsters from difficult content could give you more, so you can see that it is giving you more progression. And honestly, in the backside of things, like this might be exactly how Chaos Cores actually work, but the difference here is that players would have a very clear goal if they want to specifically hunt for gear upgrades. And this could also happen alongside the already existing Chaos Core system, so that people have a clear directive, and also so that it feels like, hey, the game is just like spitting out tons of Chaos Cores randomly, and that could also be fun. Now, another downside to the new Chaos Core progression system is a change to how gear gets upgraded. Let me explain. They've actually moved away from listing gear stats like damage per second or stuff like that, or healing per second or damage reduction, to instead giving every piece of gear a gear score. Now, I actually don't have any issues with this. I think it simplifies things. It helps players better compare tank gear to healer gear to damage gear, whatever, because all those different types of gear have very different functions, right? But one of my favorite aspects from upgrading your gear from a year ago, back then, is that once you reached a certain level, your equipment would have big upgrades. Like, some of them would actually essentially evolve and gain a new ability. Some of these were very simple, like an additional stun duration or a significant increase in stats, but some were really interesting, like more projectiles firing for every attack, or now your shots would bounce between more enemies, right? There's these cool effects that were really enjoyable to get because it feels like you really got a big upgrade with a random gear. And they've actually gotten rid of these big evolutions of gear, which I find kind of disappointing. Now it's all just about your gear score, which I find less interesting than evolving mechanics for your weapon. And this is just my own personal opinion, and I can understand them making this change so that the game is more accessible to players that would find these. Like, if you are a new player and you see somebody who's attacking with your same weapon, but their weapon is doing things differently than yours, that's confusing. Why is mine not adding an additional stun? Huh, that's weird. Like, That's an issue that needs to be like considered, but I like all of the random evolutions and stuff like that. Okay, now I still want to get to Moco's Endgame, or their Elite Hunter program, as well as PvP, or Hunter v Hunter. But first, let's cover improvements to the tutorial and Moco's lore, or story. While the tutorial a year ago was fine at teaching players how to play the game, it actually did almost nothing to explain why we're playing the game. Why are we hunting these monsters? Now, I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, okay? But good news, there is a new tutorial that does a much better job at giving you a story now. It also introduces you to various NPC monster hunters that have unique personalities that teach you about the Moco universe, and it's really cool. It's fun. It's fun dialogue. They do it in a very tasteful way without it also being like so much text, right? More important than anything though, now you have an actual quest system to help you progress through the game with like more direction. And the new quest system is how you unlock new weapons, new gadgets, other equipment and stuff like that. Previously, unlocking new gear was partially random, like it could just randomly happen in a specific area, but there were also specific tasks that you could complete to unlock new weapons and gadgets and other equipment. Now, every piece of equipment is locked behind a specific quest that you have to reach and complete within the story. And you can actually have multiple different quests available at the time from different Moco characters. So you can focus on one thing or the next thing or something like that. This gives the game a better sense of direction, in my opinion, than before. And while I do think that there is some merit to randomly unlocking new like awesome items and stuff like that, I think this new system has more pros than cons, and I think it's better. Now, another huge improvement to unlocking new gear is that whenever you unlock a new piece of equipment, it will already be upgraded to be one of your strongest pieces of gear. This is huge. A year ago, when you got a new piece of equipment, it was almost like disappointing because it was at a super low level, and then you had to grind a ton to get it to be competitive with your other equipment. Now, when you get a new weapon or gadget, it'll immediately be useful, which means that like unlocking is just way more exciting, and you can just go in and try it out and be like, oh, how is this new thing compared to my other stuff? Oh, it feels really strong. Maybe I'll start using this. This is really awesome. Honestly, this new way of like upgrading your gear when you first get it, it's just so much better. I really love it. Big props to them for doing that. Now, another aspect that I love about Moco's new player experience is that you have a much wider variety of equipment much sooner than you do a year ago. For this beta, I only had access to one chapter of the game, whereas in the previous beta, we actually had access to 2 chapters. This one chapter was longer than both of those chapters, but within playing for like 3 or 4 weeks, I unlocked 11 weapons, 12 active gadget abilities, and 9 passive module abilities. That is 11 new pieces of equipment compared to a year ago, and I didn't even get upgraded enough to unlock everything either. There were still at least 2 things that I wasn't able to unlock yet because I wasn't upgraded enough to complete the difficult tasks. Now, that also does not include the 14 amplifiers, which weren't even in the game a year ago, which I'll talk about amplifiers and the Elite Hunter program a little bit later on. I really appreciate how much faster you can unlock new gear in this new playable in a very big way, because the options, they felt pretty limited a year ago, which is really, really cool. Now, very quickly, the goal of this video isn't to show all of the new equipment. Things will absolutely change before the game is released. And there's actually like a pieces of equipment that they totally rebalanced. They got rid of the chicken staff. They replaced it with a chicken module. I didn't see the poison bow, which was like the best weapon in the game a year ago. And now we have something else, I think. Then again, maybe poison bow is a piece of equipment they're saving for a future chapter. I don't know. But I will say this, there are a lot of new, really cool pieces of gear in the game that are a lot of fun to play with. You'll see some of them in the background gameplay here that you can kind of see. Now, another piece of feedback that I had from a year ago is that there just was not enough monster variety early on. There were some small changes that you would see as you progress, but most of the monsters, that like new monster sightings, were pretty uncommon back then. Like within like a first couple of days, you pretty much seen most of the monsters. And good news, that is definitely improved with this beta test. And as you progress also, the AI of some of these monsters improve quite a bit as well. There's actually this really cool slime monster. I thought it was the most interesting one. It starts out really small, but there's tons of them all over the map. And it actually runs away from you if you attack it to try and find other slimes. And then it will combine with these other slimes. And if it combines with enough with them, then it becomes a mega slime, which deals so much damage and is actually pretty hard to kill. And that's just like one example of one of my favorite favorite monsters. But there are actually quite a few new bosses, and some of them are actually really hard, especially when you face a lot of them together at once, which happens in the overworld. I'm sure by the time you're watching this part of the video, you've seen me die a couple of times. Anyway, yeah, all of the monsters from this beta are still from the first two worlds, the dragon world and the beetle world. They did actually mention on Reddit that they have some monsters from additional worlds in development, and they've also shared images of plenty of monsters that I never actually got to face in the most recent beta. So I imagine they're saving that for chapter 2, maybe chapter 3, whenever they release that. I'll explain more about what these chapters are, okay? In fact, let's do it. Let's talk about Endgame. A year ago in the beta, there was no Endgame in Moco. Once you reached max level and upgraded all of your gear, there was literally nothing else to do in the game. Like, not like people complain like, oh, there's nothing to do in this game. No, like there was actually not anything else to do in the game because it was in beta and they hadn't made an Endgame yet. That was very expected, right? In the most recent beta, I got to play Endgame. And their end game is the Elite Hunter program. Once you reach the current max level for the game, you become an Elite Hunter, which gives you access to 3 different things. First of all XP that you get from that point on will go to Elite Hunter levels. Second of all, you now have access to amplifiers. Amplifiers are additional pieces of gear that you can use to further customize your build. They're pretty simple, each of them. In fact, they're all little stat bonuses, but allows you to adjust everything from attack speed to damage to crit to the strength of your pets to how fast your movement speed is to how much you heal to how much you crit heal, like all sorts of different stats and stuff like that, which is really cool. Now, the whole goal here is that as you get more XP after reaching max level, then you reach higher Elite Hunter levels, and that gives you the chance to unlock higher powered amplifiers. Now, these are the first 2 things that you get access to. The third thing you will get access to as part of the Elite Hunter program are elite tasks. Elite tasks are essentially just quests to complete that get you these elite tokens, and these elite token currencies are then used to buy cosmetics for that current season, and the coolest cosmetics are going to require the most elite tokens. I mean, aside from the coolest cosmetics that require money to buy, but there will be really cool cosmetics for free-to-play players to be able to get as well. And you'll actually get most elite tokens by completing the hardest tasks in the game, and in order for you to complete the hardest tasks in the game, you'll need the strongest amplifiers to complete, and you will need more Elite Hunter levels to unlock those strongest amplifiers. It's a never-ending cycle, as you can see. Get more XP, get more levels, get more amplifiers, complete more difficult content, unlock tokens to be able to get the coolest skins in the game. And it continues and continues and continues. It's a never-ending cycle that rewards the players who play the most, but it also makes casual players feel rewarded for their time and efforts as well. And honestly, it's a pretty good system in my opinion, but it still is not perfect. I would say that there is one really, really huge flaw, like a really big flaw here. Before I can explain it, let me explain kind of my understanding of how Moco plans to release new content. New content is going to release in chapters. When the game first launches globally, we'll be able to play Chapter 1, which has a max level of 30, at least right now. Things may change. Once you complete Chapter 1 and you reach level 30, the reason to keep playing until the next chapter is out is to unlock Elite Hunter levels so you can get stronger amplifiers, so you can get cooler cosmetics. Then, once Chapter 2 is released with new equipment, new monsters, new content, then the only thing that you get to keep from the Elite Hunter program are the cosmetics that you earned. You lose your Elite Hunter levels, which I'm completely fine with, but you also lose all of your amplifiers, which means that all of the additional power that you got from grinding the game is gone. All of the power progression for everyone who reaches max level for Chapter 1 is then eliminated, and everyone is back to the same power level. Then the max level is increased for Chapter 2. Let's say it increases from max level being 30 to max level being 40. And then once you reach the new max level, let's say 40, for Chapter 2, you regain access to the Elite Hunter program, and you can re-earn amplifiers and then continue to grind for cosmetics. The whole time knowing that power progression that you are grinding for in amplifiers is going to get deleted as soon as Chapter 3 releases. And this cycle is going to continue. It keeps people interested in the main game without also making it so that the best players in the game are never going to be beaten because they've spent so much more time in the game. And if you have played a lot of other MMOs like I have, then you will know that this honestly is not too different from what has worked in other games. World of Warcraft is a prime example of this. With each new expansion, the gear you spend hours grinding for, it becomes essentially essentially useless because the new gear in the expansion is so much better. And I know that this has worked for World of Warcraft, but honestly, I still think that World of Warcraft got this wrong, okay? Sure, the most hardcore players love it because it is a massive race to reach the new endgame content and get the new best gear so that they can be at the top of the leaderboards. But for anyone who can't completely devote their life to the game that season, it just sucks. A lot of players will quit as soon as they reach max level and get the gear that they are happy with because they know that they're going to be at the same starting point as everybody else when the new expansion releases. And they may have every intention to come back with the new expansion, and some of the players will come back, but some of them won't with every new expansion. With all of the power progression becoming obsolete once you reach the new max level for the current expansion, even World of Warcraft has continued to lose players since 2010 when it peaked. I don't want Moco to do worse and worse with each new chapter release. I want Moco to be like Brawl Stars, which is growing currently at an unprecedented rate 6 years after its release. Moco needs something to keep players playing between chapter releases, and cosmetics are not enough, at least not for me. I care about progression. That's what I want. I don't even need a ton of power progression, but I do need something to reward the time that I put into it after I've completed all the content. If the Elite Hunter program stays the same, here's what I will do. Every single time I reach a new max level for the current chapter, I'll get my weapons and my gear to max level for level 30, other than the amplifiers, because amplifiers are going to go away, and then I will stop playing until the next chapter releases. I don't really care about cosmetics, so why should I keep playing? My gear won't get stronger, and when the next chapter releases, I'll have just as strong of equipment as the #1 global player who put hundreds of hours into the game just so that they could get amplifiers or getting deleted. I have so many other games that I want to play and not enough time. I'd rather play old school RuneScape, which is another MMO that always rewards me for the time that I put into it, even when new expansions or new content are released into the game. I'd even rather play my free-to-play account on Brawl Stars that still has tons of brawlers who aren't maxed out yet. I'd rather play Genshin Impact that has an amazing storyline and a complex equipment and progression system that I really enjoy sinking my teeth into, even after I've completed all the content that's currently into the game. I would rather play any other game that adequately rewards me for the time that I put into it. And those are just 3 games that I personally wish that I could play more of because I have a lot of progression I want to get, and that progression will be a permanent upgrade to my account. Moco needs to be better than World of Warcraft if they want to be an MMO that has more players than World of Warcraft. It needs to be better than pretty much every other copy-paste MMO out there if they want to be the next big game that everyone plays. They need to give players a reason to continue playing even after they've completed the current content that is available for the game. That progression does not have to be huge, like I said, but it needs to be permanent, and it needs to be related to power some way. Cosmetics will be enough for some players, but they're not enough for everyone. They certainly aren't enough for me, and I love Moco gameplay a ton. Now, with all that being said, there are good things about the Elite Hunter Endgame that I really do like. It gives you a good reason to go back to farm previous locations that you've already done. And also, I like that this new system helps new players reach endgame relatively quickly compared to the long-term players. I also think that players who care about showing off the cool skins in the game will have a way to show off their accomplishments and their achievements. I think that's really awesome. Even though I won't be one of those that are grinding for a skin, there are people that care about that, and I think that's really cool. And honestly, as a content creator, like, I'll probably be doing it just because I'm a content creator. I was talking about here's what I would do if I were playing and I wasn't a content creator, but you get the idea. It's also a really cool way to continually reward the most hardcore and dedicated players who want to stay at the top of the leaderboard, because with the release of each new chapter, there will always be an exciting race for them to reach the top. It's honestly a really good system, and once it also encourages players to play for power progression in some way, I think it's going to be even better. And I have a solution for this, or a suggestion at least. My suggestion is to allow players to stabilize one amplifier with each chapter reset. The idea is that amplifiers use chaotic energy that destabilizes with time, and you would use all the energy from all of your amplifiers for that season to stabilize one of them. And stabilized amplifiers, they wouldn't be as strong as other amplifiers, and they couldn't be upgraded like other amplifiers, but they would be a permanent upgrade with each new chapter. Even if they didn't add a ton of power progression, I would be fine. This would give players a reason to keep playing, especially for years, because that would help them to continue to build up a supply of amplifiers to then use between chapter releases, which they know that they're going to be, if they want to play for years, there will be new chapter releases and they're going to want those amplifiers between chapter ends. Okay, let's talk about PvP. This is exciting. Currently, I got to experience 2 PvP game modes, or Hunter vs. Hunter game modes. There was a 20-player free-for-all and a 4v4 team mode. The concept for both of them is very similar. Monsters spawn on a map, and when you kill them, they drop a resource that you'll want to pick up. I don't actually know what they're called, so I'll just call them points. They may be renamed something else later. The more points you have at the end of the match, the better you place in the 20-man free-for-all, and obviously you want to have more than the other team in the 4v4 mode. The harder the monsters are to kill, the more points they drop, so there's some strategy between like which types of monsters that you want to kill. You may farm some small monsters and get some points here or there safely and away from everybody else, or you might try and hunt the big stuff. You may also want to just let somebody else spend time killing the big boss and then swoop in at the last second and run away with their points. There's even a weapon that makes you invisible as long as you're not taking damage, that you can swoop in there and kill them and they're not expecting it. It's actually really cool. It's an awesome assassin ability. You'll have to be careful though, because when you die, or you kill somebody, that player then loses some of their points and the enemy can pick them up. Now, I never really got to play against actual people because like during this beta test, because there weren't a whole lot of people playing this beta test. We're talking about Supercell employees and like just a couple of content creators. So my experience was exclusively playing with and against bots. And I can't speak too much about how fun the PvP modes were because bots just aren't fun to play against, right? Like that's the truth. Honestly, they're like the other monsters because they have AI and I kind of know how to abuse them and I could just go kill all of them, right? But that being said, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I do think that a lot of people will enjoy it. But most importantly, I think the developers did PvP in a primarily player versus monster game very well. One thing that I love is that the power of your weapon is actually capped at a very reasonable level. Max level when I played was level 30, and the gear power was actually capped at level 14 for PvP, which only took me a few days to reach. So unless you are super underleveled, PvP is going to be very fair and should be very skill-based, I think. Now, I've played a lot of MMOs, and PvP is pretty rarely balanced in them. This is especially true in games where you play one specific class or build, because the game is balanced around fighting monsters and bosses and stuff like that. And usually there are just a few classes that are just straight up better than others in PvP, and it becomes super difficult to balance PvP on top of balancing the game for boss fights. But I think that PvP in Moco is actually going to do a lot better than most MMOs because players are able to freely swap gear and everyone will have access to the same gear and abilities, assuming that they play enough, right? Additionally, they won't have to balance every piece of equipment around PvP because PvP will not be required for you to progress in the game at all. There will be some benefits to doing some PvP when it comes to completing PvP quests that give you XP, but there are tons of other quests that give you XP, so it is by no means necessary. And I think that this is exactly how Moco should develop its PvP. I don't think that PvP is going to be something that people will necessarily come to Moco for, but there will be Moco players who will really enjoy PvP in Moco, and I think that is the perfect balance to strike. And if there does become a massive need for PvP updates because the community is just like, we love PvP in the game, please give us some more, then they can always make that more of an emphasis in the game without forcing the rest of the community to participate in PvP, which is awesome. I think it's super good. I have no complaints about PvP. I think it's fantastic. Those are all the new features. Let's talk about some other stuff, some complaints that I had a year ago when I played the beta and my thoughts on them now that I've played it after a year of development. One thing to talk about very quickly is that a year ago, one of my complaints was that the controls were just very simple. Right? For the controls, you have one joystick for your movement, then you have one button for your attack, 3 buttons for your gadgets, and then a button for your dash. So that's 5 buttons, and those 5 buttons cannot be aimed or anything like that. They automatically target, and my big feedback to them was like, hey, even Brawl Stars has a couple of different joysticks. Like you got to be able to manually attack or aim your shots, right? Or give us some customized controls and stuff like that. And surprisingly, they actually did do some testing to try and allow people to like lock onto certain monsters and stuff, but found that it just was not super great. They opted to keep the design very simple, at least for now. And I have good news. When I gave my feedback that the controls just did not offer enough depth, I added a disclaimer that I'm actually fine with the controls being very simple if they release Moco for PC or add controller support, maybe even add it for console for the game to be able to like be cross-platform. If the game is playable cross-platform, having simple controls like Moco's that works for all platforms makes a lot of sense. And the good news is because in a developer Q&A 6 months ago, when asked if they would release a PC version or have controller support, they said, "We," and I quote, "we absolutely want to do both, but it's far from easy. The question is more about when would we be able to deliver it," end quote. Okay, to me, this sounds like they are committed to cross-platform, but it may take some time. Maybe it'll be available for the global launch. Maybe it won't happen until later, but that makes me feel a lot better about the controls, even if I do hope that they make them a little bit better in the future. I don't know, we'll see. Now, the next issue that I want to talk about very briefly that was kind of addressed in this update, but not 100%, was that for me personally, the game's difficulty was, okay, difficulty is a weird word because yes, there were parts where the game was difficult. You will see me dying in this footage that you're seeing here, but the game does not do a very good job at allowing for skill expression, at least not with the content that I saw, which is not 100% true because there was more skill expression with the monsters and bosses that I fought in this build than there was from a year ago. There was, in fact, there's one boss that like, at first I was like, man, I keep on dying to him. His attacks are just too fast. I've got to bring this item that allows me to jump over him or something like that so that I can avoid some of his attacks. And as I then was able to play against him, then I learned, oh, the timing of his attacks is actually fairly readable if you're paying attention. You don't need that jump ability to be able to avoid all of his attacks. You just have to be a little bit more careful and be aware of the timing. So that's good. And that actually gave me some hope for the game because what I got to play was chapter 1. This is not supposed to be the most difficult content in the game. It's supposed to be content that is like easy for everybody to be able to play and to get them into the game so that later on when there is difficult content in the game, these players want to learn that new content. And I would say that my concerns for how much skill expression is in the game have somewhat been addressed. I will say that it wasn't the highest skill expression MMO that I have played, but they have the puzzle pieces in place to be able to make the game difficult for the players that want a real good challenge. And when I say challenge, I don't mean like high DPS monsters with tons of HP that you just have to eat through for 7 minutes to be able to kill. And that's not fun for me. I don't like that. And unfortunately, that's what some of their challenges are. Like if you do not kill the boss or the enemies by a specific time, then there's enrage mode where all of a sudden, like you're not going to survive very long in enrage mode, like maybe 10 seconds if you just run away from stuff. That's boring. Honestly, I think enrage mode is a good idea, but I think that it needs to slowly build up instead of just immediately turn on. Anyway, that's my opinion. Games like Dark Souls or Hades do a really good job at celebrating skill expression, and I would love it if Moco was able to do so in the long run. Even old school RuneScape, which I play a ton of and looks like a very simple point and click game, has some very difficult bosses that I spent months learning before I was able to kill them one time. That I know that sounds crazy. There's actually 2 of them in the game that are like that, and it's insane. And I just beat one just a couple weeks ago, and I'm so excited about it. That's not the point, though. I want skill expression to be celebrated in the game, and Moco has the potential to do that. Another issue that I felt was not addressed with this beta was a lack of connection with your character. The character models still feel very neutral to me. They're very androgynous, meaning that they aren't very masculine, they aren't very feminine, they look like they could be either, which is fine, and that's definitely a design choice. And I think that, people that want to be that character, they want to have a character that is androgynous, I think that should be celebrated. I think that's a really fantastic. And there certainly are a lot of cool cosmetics, and I like how you can customize the outfits that you wear for each of your 4 builds. But honestly, one of my favorite aspects of any MMO is being able to have a character model that either represents who I am. I got a good strong jawline. I'm not very muscular, but at one point in my life, I had some decent muscles, right? But there are also times that I want to play somebody who's completely different. I'm not saying we need to be able to customize every aspect of our character models like you can in Chinese MMOs, right? But more personalization of the actual body model would be a huge thing for me personally. Good news though, okay? This is huge. The game is good. I Oh, I love Moco. Oh, and honestly, I feel so bad for everybody who got to play it a year ago and who did not get to play this most recent beta, because it really scratched that itch for me. I was just like, man, I just need to play Moco. I just want to play it so bad. And then I got to, and it was so fun. It really is such a satisfying game. The more I play it, the more I love it. And I really love it. Even with my issues with progression randomization and power progression being temporary for elite hunters, I still had a very hard time putting the game down. I constantly found myself getting distracted and going from one objective to another. You know those moments in games where you're constantly like, okay, just one more game, just one more game. That was huge for me in this game in a big way. That's even knowing that my progression in this beta was going to be completely eliminated. Not just my elite hunter levels, no, like all of it. The game is fun. The quest line is better than it was. The daily quests feel really fast and easy to get done if you're in a rush. And I love that you can progress as quickly as you want in a way, right? The game plays well if you have limited time. It also gives you so much to do if you want to no life the game. I think it's going to be the most fun MMO to play with friends. Absolutely. I did a decent amount of actually playing with my girls, even though they weren't technically invited to the beta. Sorry, developers. They saw me playing it. They wanted to play it. I mean, I'm their dad. I gotta let them play fun games, right? It's your fault. You made a fun game. That's right. But we had a blast. The game celebrates people farming with each other. And I think that that aspect of the game is going to make it a ton of fun to play with your friends. And like, especially to stream. Oh, it's going to be so fun to stream. The most fun stream that I've had on any game ever on YouTube was a Moco stream for 9 hours. That was more than twice as long as I've streamed any other game in a single setting. And it was so much fun because of the people that were playing with me on the live stream. And that means it's going to be fun to play with your favorite streamers. Combat and farming is extremely satisfying. And aside from upgrading gear being random, the new gear progression still feels really, really good. I don't know when the game is going to go global. It will, honestly, I think that it will depend on how they respond to the feedback that we just gave them and how much content beyond chapter 1 they have prepared and what they do with this feedback. It took them a year to apply feedback from the last beta. And this one wasn't even a public beta. Maybe they'll do another public beta. Maybe they won't. I don't know. Maybe it will take another year for them to develop things. I hope it doesn't take that long, but I also want the game to be as good as possible. And that means waiting to release the game until it is actually ready. If you made it this far into the video, I would love it if you dropped your thoughts below with hashtag Moco for life so that I know that you watched it. Because you're a hardcore fan of Moco. I can already tell. I mean, this isn't even Brawl Stars stuff and you're still watching. I hope you're as excited about the game as I am. Make sure you subscribe for any news that I am able to give you about the game, because I will definitely be covering it once it's released. Also, massive thank you to the Moco team for letting me share this. Seriously. And also this, they sent me this model of Ladybug. She's awesome. Or as Princess. She was Princess a year ago. I never saw her named Princess in this playable. She was named Ladybug. So cool. Handmade. Like, seriously, thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys in the next Moco video.